Dennis Nilsen was a Scottish serial killer who murdered at least 12 young men and boys between 1978 and 1983 in London as the Muswell Hill murderer and the kindly killer. He is also often described as the British version of Jeffery Dahmer. Nilsen's crimes were particularly gruesome and disturbing, and he has been described as one of the most horrific serial killers in British history. His case has been the subject of several books and films, including the ITV drama Deaths in 2020. In today's video, let's take a look into the bone-chilling world of Dennis Nilsen. Dennis Andrew Nilsen was born on the 23rd of November 1945 in Fraserburgh, Aberdeenshire, the second of three children born to Elizabeth Wyatt and Olaf Oxheim. In 1948, his parents had divorced, and his mother decided to live with her parents along with the kids. Over there, Nilsen in particular was very close to his grandfather, who would often take care of Nilsen and his siblings, and would often take him and his siblings on long walks on the countryside. He later described the stage of his childhood as one of contentment, and his grandfather being his great hero and protector. By 1951, Nilsen's grandfather's health was in decline, but he continued to work. On the 31st of October 1951, while fishing in the North Sea, he died of a heart attack at the age of 62. In the years following the death of his grandfather, Nilsen had become more quiet and withdrawn, often standing alone at the harbor watching the herring boats. At home, he seldom participated in family activities and retreated from any attempts by adult family members to demonstrate any affection towards him. Nilsen grew to resent what he saw as the unfair amount of attention his mother, grandmother, and later stepfather displayed towards his older brother and younger sister. After his grandfather's death, the only person he was close to was his younger sister, Sylvia. As he grew older, he realized he was bisexual, as not only was he attracted to boys at the time, but also somewhat attracted to his younger sister, Sylvia. In 1961, at the age of 14, he joined the Army Cadet Force. He wanted to join the army and become a chef there. In mid-1964, Nilsen passed his initial catering exam and was officially assigned to West Germany, where he served as a private. In this deployment, Nilsen began drinking heavily. During his time there, he managed to keep his sexuality well hidden from his colleagues. In fact, his sexual fantasies would also become quite disturbing during that time. Nilsen killed his first victim, 14-year-old Stephen Holmes, on the 30th of December 1978. Holmes encountered Nilsen in the Cricklewood Arms pub, where Holmes had unsuccessfully attempted to purchase alcohol. According to Nilsen, he had been drinking heavily alone on the day he met Holmes. At Nilsen's home, both he and Holmes drank heavily before they fell asleep. The next morning, Nilsen strangles the young boy with a necktie as he didn't want Holmes to leave him alone. Though Holmes did try to fight back as he was being strangled, but to no avail. Nilsen wasn't done there though. He then goes to the kitchen, fills a bucket with water before drowning the teenager. Once he was done, he would place the young boy's corpse underneath the floorboard, where it stayed for almost 8 months until 11th of August 1979, when he decided to burn the body in a garden behind his flat. Exactly 2 months later, on the 11th of October 1979, he once again gave in to his urges and attempted to murder a student from Hong Kong named Andrew Ho, whom he had met in a St. Martin's Lane pub and lured to his flat on the promise of sex. Nilsen attempted to strangle Ho the same way he strangled Holmes previously, but this time Andrew managed to escape and later reported the incident to the police. Nilsen was questioned in relation to the incident, but Ho decided to not press charges. The same year, on the 3rd of December 1979, Nilsen encountered a 23-year-old Canadian student named Kenneth Ockenden, who had been on a tour of England visiting relatives. Nilsen encountered Kenneth as they both drank in a West End pub. Upon learning the young man was a tourist, Nilsen offered to show Kenneth several London landmarks, an offer which Kenneth accepted. Nilsen then invited the student to his house on the promise of a meal and further drinks. Unfortunately for Kenneth, he would come to his unfortunate demise the same way as Holmes did before him. These incidents continued for the next few years until 1981, when his landlord decided to renovate the apartment and asked Nilsen to vacate the property. Nilsen was initially resistant to the proposal, but accepted an offer of £1,000 from the landlord to vacate the residence. Before leaving the apartment, he would burn the bodies he had hid underneath his floorboard. He later moved into an attic flat at 23D Cranley Gardens in the Muswell Hill district of North London on the 5th of October 1981. In 1982, Nilsen encountered 23-year-old John Howlett while drinking in a pub near Leicester Square. Howlett was lured to Nilsen's flat on the promise of continuing drinking with Nilsen. There, both Nilsen and Howlett drank as they watched a film together, before Howlett walked into Nilsen's front room and fell asleep in his bed. As Nilsen was trying to strangle Howlett, he would find it to be his most challenging, as at one point Howlett himself attempted to strangle his attacker. Though after some back and forth, Nilsen strangled Howlett into unconsciousness with an upholstery strap before returning to his living room. Shaken from the stress of struggle in which he had believed he would be overpowered, on 3 occasions over the following 10 minutes, Nilsen unsuccessfully attempted to kill Howlett, denoting he had resumed breathing before deciding to fill his bathtub with water and drown him. Once again, his killing spree continued for the next few months, though this time around, it was a little difficult for him to get rid of the bodies as he did in his previous flat. He decided to dissect the bodies into smaller pieces and would try to flush down small body parts in the toilet. On January 26, 1983, he would kill his final victim, 20-year-old Stephen Sinclair. Now, as you can imagine, because of Nilsen trying to flush down all the body parts, the pipes would eventually get blocked. Not only were all the other tenants complaining to the landlord about it, but also Nilsen himself wrote a letter of complaint to the estate agent on February 4, 1983, complaining that the drains at Cranley Gardens were blocked and that the situation for both himself and the other tenants at the property was intolerable. So on February 8, 1983, a man by the name of Michael Catran, who worked for a company called Dino Rod, discovered flesh-like substances and numerous small bones packed in the pipes. He would then report it to his supervisor, Gary Wheeler, who would then notify the police. Once the police arrived, they would collect samples from the drain and have it analyzed by a pathologist who would later confirm that these indeed were human remains. Authorities would soon question everyone living in the building, and almost everyone would point fingers towards Nilsen's flat. Detective Chief Inspector Peter J. and two colleagues opted to wait outside the house until Nilsen returned home from work. When Nilsen returned home, DCIJ introduced himself and his colleagues, explaining that they had come to inquire about the blockage into the drains from his flat. Nilsen asked why the police were so interested in his drains, and also whether or not the two officers present with Jay were health inspectors. The three officers followed Nilsen into his flat, where they immediately noted the odor of rotting flesh. It was soon after that Nilsen was arrested. While en route to the police station, Nilsen was asked whether the remains in his flat belonged to one person or two. Staring out the window of the police car, he replied, 15 or 16, since 1978. Nilsen was later brought to trial on the 24th of October 1983, charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 for attempted murder, and pleaded not guilty on all charges. Ultimately, he was found guilty and sentenced to life, with a recommendation that he serve a minimum of 25 years in prison. In 1983, the sentence was replaced by a whole life tariff by Home Secretary Michael Howard in December 1994. This ruling ensured Nilsen would never be released from prison, a punishment he accepted. He died on the 12th of May 2018 due to complications in his body. He was 72 years old. It is said that he died in excruciating agony. Well folks, that was the end of the case file. Hope you did find the video interesting. If you've made it this far, I would genuinely appreciate it if you would give this video a like, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, as it would really help me. You can also follow me on Twitter. The handle is in the description box below. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and please be safe. Peace.